Welcome to the final video in a series on the design and build of this cruising dinghy for 2 people, the Bedbug. If you were paying attention to the intro, you saw a clip or two where it was on the water. We launched the boat.
Certainly going to entice me.
I have too much to say about just a first reaction to actually having it under sail, both like good and a critique or two. So if you weren't interested in how I made sails and poorly applied varnish, and you just skipped to the end to see it on the water, then I wouldn't be offended. But first, this is a video series about how I built the boat, and so I'm going to start with making sails. But a little comment first about the channel. My goal in making this channel was to show my exploration of designing and building small boats, hoping that it gave a realistic perspective of the process to show that it's accessible to people who are like me when I first got into this, who maybe have more ambition than they have sense, but they don't have any mentors or any real guidance on how to get into this. And part of the reason I bring this up is because sails are one of those things that they scare away even some of the most brave boat builders. And in reality, they're not that tough. I mean, for example, the boat that started this channel, my seamless skiff, was designed to use an off-the-shelf canvas tarp from Harbor Freight so that people who wanted to build a boat wouldn't be scared away from getting sails. And, it's a sail that would function not excellently, but it would work. And to make excellent sails is really a refined craft, but so is building a boat. And I guess I'm trying to say that don't be scared to try it. You could practice on a plastic tarp or even a canvas tarp. I've made sails out of both. Pay attention to warp and weft, how fabric is woven, because it'll stretch more diagonally than at the direction of the threads. This book is the ultimate guide on making traditional sails. And even after I design a sail and get into building, this is my 7th set of sails that I'm building. I refer to this book repeatedly as I go about putting these sails together. And finally, making sails, it is tedious, but so is a lot of work building a boat. You just got to grind it out. I mentioned in a previous video that I'm moving out of this house I've lived in for 15 years. As I prep this room to make sails for the last time, it's kind of like a bittersweet goodbye. This last project in this house, all the sails I made for 6 previous boats were laid out on this floor. Some of the smaller boats I made were even made in this room and then carried out that back door. And this is the last project in this place that's held a lot of memories for me. So it's kind of, like I said, bittersweet, but things change. And one of the things that changed is I used to get sailcloth from Duckworks, but now they're no longer a hard goods retailer. The good people over there, they'll still sell you the blueprints for your dream boat build, but I went to Sailrite for this Dacron cloth. The sailcloth that I got from Sailrite, it's 5 feet wide, and I'm used to sailcloth being 3 feet wide. And the 3-dimensional shape of a sail is influenced by that distance between seams. So I'm going to cut this whole roll in half to make it 2.5 feet wide, 30 inches. So it's easier, more familiar to shape my sail with. After checking sail dimensions on my laptop, I'm going to draw this shape right on the concrete floor. This is a big sail for me. It's 110 square feet. I usually make them pretty small. And the leech, or that rear edge of this sail. That's the longest dimension. So I fit that one in this room first because I don't have a whole lot of space left over. And I'm going to triangulate from the ends of this first line, this leech line, to find other points on the sail, other corners. So like with that line, I already have drawn the length of the leech, I already have 2 corners. And then a next one is going to be like a specific distance from the bottom of the leech line, a specific distance from the top of the leech line. So you measure those 2 lengths and draw arcs, and then where they intersect is your point that you're looking for. It's surprisingly accurate. There's only like one other point to triangulate, 4 sides I already had, or 4 corners I already had 2. And then you can just kind of triangulate a third time to double check your measurements. You can see a handful of stray tape marks on the floor in here from previous sails. The ones that I'm working with now are blue. All right, time to lay out that sailcloth. I'm leaving space for extra fabric over the lines because some of this is going to get taken out in broad seaming. It's going to shrink a little bit. And there's two ideas behind running the cloth parallel to the leech. One is that it makes it easier for me to broad seam, to shape the sail, and another is that the cloth stretches along the directions of the threads less. Woven fabric, it's like a grid, and fabric generally stretches diagonally to the direction of the threads or along the bias. Like if you've laid woven fiberglass before, you've seen this effect get exaggerated in that loose weave. And so you lay it out so it doesn't stretch and bag out the sail too much. And I just follow the directions in the book. I think I did 1.5 inches of overlap for my seams and came back a second time off camera to double stitch them.
That is so crazy. Chargers down here decided we're just going to plug these batteries. And basically what that does is generator on and do the same thing we did when we had that failure.
And then after we had sex, I would chat with them. And I was
These diagonals are for marking out my broad seaming. Then I can mark and bring in that seam to the new mark. This creates a cup shape in that otherwise flat sail. The idea isn't only to add shape, it's to control the shape so that there's more curve up front, like an airplane wing, and less curve in the back that would just be drag, like a windsock. And you can see that with these new seams taped up, that the sail no longer lies flat, and that's exactly what you want. A walking zigzag stitch, it's the standard for sewing sails, and I set it to maximum zigzag on my machine. If you know anything about sewing, you know that you want to adjust tension so the threads cross just about in the middle of your two pieces of fabric. You always do a test run. I've been chasing tension issues with this machine for a while, so I'm gonna have to settle for good enough, but I'm not happy about it. Oh, even better. And then it's time for a couple hours of sewing yoga to get these seams done. Kama Sutra. Wait, oh, Kama Sutra. Fuck, I fucked it up. I'm stupid. Careful not to let your seams move out of place. Don't let them shift, especially in your broad seaming. I like a sticky masking tape for this, and then the sail's about half done. Now with material taken out of that broad seaming, the sail has shrunken a little bit, and you can mark the final outline of this sail.
Benjamin Franklin's own grandson for Washington himself, in thirst for ridiculous pomp. He actually ran for re-election from his jail cell and the law.
If this sail were bent to a mast, like if I were tying that leading edge to a mast, I would add a little bit of round, a little bit of curve at the luff. Basically, like I would cut an extra inch or two of curve in that leading edge. So the sail, when it gets tied to the mast, that extra fabric bunches up at the front, and you add that desired curve to the front of the sail. Remember that airplane wing shape you want. Because the yard is almost vertical, I add just a hair of round to the head of the sail. There's a little bit of round that's going to get added in the taper of that yard too. The foot gets some round, but that's mostly just style.
For the first time, before the 1830s,
Now I mark reefing points. 3 reefing points on this sail. It kind of seems excessive.
Website, marketing tools to run your business. Like I did. Get the right domain in the world.
and things like one, that boosts your number. But I personally find more people online that I do trust than at any point in my life. Because one thing about this era, it's not being...
Now this sail needs a lot of reinforcement. About half the work of the sail is all this reinforcement sewing. Triple layered patches, they're going to spread out the forces from the points where you tie it off. I made 3 sizes of grommet reinforcements. All reef point corners get 3 layers added in these patches, and the patches for bending the yard to the mast are just going to get 2 layers because that's force is spread out along that whole yard.
We call it silly balls. And leaders going full time. With people getting into the details because so many other creators. But I mean, yeah, I'll leave you worried. That was way after my college. I have access to a penis, and now I still don't know about like penis. And I've never, anything I wanted to try. I'll try. All right, be good. Good luck. You just realized it was dream symbolism, and you actually just wanted to laugh. Library conversation. It sounds like just really proud of it. It's the same for there's gonna be trouble because they keep stores and fucking, you gotta figure it out. Right? Nobody yoked with brothers. Yoked with coaching. My guy comes over and pay for everything. I love it. I love all that shit. It's fun.
Then each layer of each patch gets its own seam to the sail. The goal is to spread out the stress because focused stress causes failure. So those are my patches for the tie-off points of the sail, but I need to reinforce the edges. So I run a string line to mark out strips of sailcloth, and then I'm going to fold these twice over on themselves so that they're 4 layers thick, and then this will circle the whole sail.
want some, you know what I mean?
And sewing is almost done. Just one last thing, these little square reef tie reinforcements, just one layer on each side. These get securely taped on each opposite face. And then I just sew right over the tape because these are so hard to keep lined up, like they're right in the middle of the sail and everything's moving all over the place. So sticky tape, just sew right over the top. And then you got to kind of pick all that tape out, which is a little bit of a pain, but it's worth it. And now I'm done sewing this thing. I'm going to put grommets at all the tie points. So 1/2 inch grommets in all the corners, 3/8 inch grommets at the head where this thing's going to get tied to the yard, bent to the yard. And because I don't have a punch for the 1/4 inch grommets at the reef ties, I heat up that grommet driving tool and melt those holes out and then trim them up a little bit. And then this big mainsail is done. Man, it was a ton of work. Still, I got more to do before I haul it up the mast. Like one thing, I gotta finish my mizzen sail now. But at 25 square feet, this thing just like threw itself together real quick. I even put in a line of reef points that seems excessive. I mean, to go from 25 square feet to like 15 square feet, if you're in conditions that need that in a mizzen, you're probably just gonna take down the mizzen.
What's the point?
The yard, the stick I'm going to tie that mainsail to, it's going to be just about as big as the mizzen mast and tapered down quite a bit at the ends, so I roughed that out now. Then a bumpkin or a stick out the back, out the stern to hold the mizzen sail, to hold the sheet it off. This gets a little hardwood partner that I roughly place on the deck before lining it all up in a way that's going to hold the mizzen sail parallel to the direction of the boat. The hole in the transom gets cut first, poorly. Then the final bumpkin step placement is marked and then glued. I ended up clamping a board to the gunnel to balance some weight on there for the glue up. And so now I'm going to go to like finish work. I already painted the hole, but I got to do finish work on the inside. I got to do varnish on these spars, and I rolled it on. This is a mistake. It should be brushed on. A light sanding helped smooth it out. Then these little mainmast, pivot, point supports. There's just a ton of little things you got to do. Putting the pivot in this tabernacle halfway up means that I'm going to have to put a gate at the top and a tie off to a cleat at the base. The more I work on this tabernacle, the more I'm reminded how strong and easily constructed a step and a partner would have been. I'm still haunted from one of my first builds where I did a big heavy mast that dropped vertically straight down into a sheathed step and partner combo, and then you had to lift this whole heavy mast out vertically. This pivoting mast design, it was intended to make raising and lowering this mast effortless, and it has some success at it. It is actually quite easy, but it's overcomplicated, it's less strong, there's trade-offs. The notch for these can be tricky. A compass will show you that, like, when you thought that notch was going to be just perpendicular, it's really actually quite curved. So marking it with that compass helped me get that perfect. All right, so back to kind of finish work. I'm going to put epoxy fillets on a lot of these joints, mainly to keep water out more than to reinforce them or anything. But it's 106 degrees outside, and at those temps, this medium cure epoxy, it'll get so hot that it's smoking before you're even done mixing it. So I ended up keeping the thickener in the fridge too, which ended up working pretty well. These clips show me using fumed silica or carbosyl to thicken it, which is fantastic. But then I ran out. And so I started using this wood flour, which is a pain in comparison. The wood flour, you just can't get a good workable consistency, and it's denser, it's heavier. So you have to mix it to a thicker slump to keep it from running. And then even if you were mixing it to the same consistency, it'd be less workable than silica. And add to that, I got the heat issues. And so I've got plenty of excuses as to why my epoxy fillets look so bad. But I'll cover them up with paint. A little bit more prep for finished work. There's a point in a build, I learned about this point in building a wooden boat on this part of this build specifically, where it seems like every time you touch something with a piece of sandpaper, it adds just a little bit of beauty to your boat. I think that this is how some guys get addicted and they spend years on just this meticulous finish work, when I, on the other hand, I just want to get paint on this thing and get it in the water. But I did catch a glimpse of the beauty of brushing on varnish or whatever. And so a little bit of that finish work meditation mentality made sense for a brief moment, briefly.
Garage, who this?
But I want to sail, so I'm going to bend the mainsail to the yard. I'm using sheet bends a lot in this, which is not the best knot for this 1100 paracord. In this line, it doesn't hold the knot too well. This is the wrong line for reef ties. Black is going to make it visible, but ugly. You want something soft and something that easily holds a knot. White wouldn't hurt either, just to not mar up the view of the sail. All right, I swear, I keep saying I'm getting serious about finish work. I'm gonna sand down my beautiful fillets before I put on primer and then cover everything up, hide all my mistakes. I put 2 coats of primer on those fillets to cover up that dark wood flour. I'm not too sure about this almond color in the interior, but I wanted something that still gave the attitude of wood, but really a light color to reflect solar radiation. I'm just not sure about it. And I am real close to raising sails. The mizzen just needs a thing or two before it goes up, but the mainsail still needs some work. My gate requires some spacing to clear that mast pivot block and some interesting bends in my arm to get to the back to fasten that nut to the back under the foredeck. But like I mentioned earlier, this main mast pivot point is being centered in the tabernacle. It creates some structural issues, so I'm going to reinforce the bottom in an attempt to spread out those forces. I cut a channel that's just like a little bit thicker than a pencil to circle the bottom and then drill a hole from front to back to line up through that channel. So as I'm drilling this hole to align with the back side of my channel, I realized that I should have drilled the hole first and then cut out the channel, but I got lucky and it all lined up perfectly. The idea with the way that I've been attaching my line on my spars is that as you pull on that line, it exerts a squeezing force on the spar, where if you just tied a knot in the back side of your hole, then it would be trying to split your wood apart. This is quality like Dyneema line in here because I don't want this to stretch. When I drilled out a hole for attaching the blocks at the top of the mast, I come in from both sides and ended up making a mess. You can kind of see it, that big oval, almost 2 holes that got drilled out of one side. But it's a good thing it's 16 feet up there and nobody can see it. Securing the bottom of the mast at this cleat should relieve some stress from the gate. And then I can raise the mainsail. I'll even sheet it off and get a look at it. There are a million little jobs that get done before launch, but most of them are just the minutia that are kind of a rough draft of like fine-tuning rigging and stuff before a final decision gets kept. I'm going to skip a bunch of these, like maybe I'll keep it this ways at the end of the video and get to the launch and some problems I'm having. For example, that yard on the mainsail, it's attached too far forward. How I run a sprit on my standing lug, it pushes that sail back, so you need to move the attachment point a little bit up. The coffin cabin, it's a blessing and a curse. You can just toss all your gear in there, but then you have a mess of gear in there. Whether or not the 2-foot wide hatch opening will stay above water in a capsize is yet to be seen. I'm gonna put some foam down there for sleeping arrangements. It is a cabin, but nothing like the real flotation buoyancy that it could be. You can clip on the main sheet from aft of that big deck section up front, but when you're working at the mast, I'm tempted to just walk up the deck, which is a safety issue, having your weight up that high. If you're patient, you can just crawl or scoot, which, I mean, it's still less than ideal, but it's not bad. I was worried that 135 square feet of sail might be a touch on the light side for a boat that displaces 1,200 pounds at the waterline, fully loaded, but so far it seems to be just about right. We were just loaded up for a day sail though, so it was a little bit lightly loaded. The hull is something of a modern shape with the beam carried well aft, which made this boat stiffer than I expected, which I like. A bit of that beam is even above the waterline too, which should add some reserve stability. It adds some weight, but makes the boat a little bit safer. It is deceptively fast, probably because I'm used to smaller boats where if you're doing 5 or 6 knots over water in an 11-foot boat, it feels like a thrill ride. But again, even in winds that were sometimes light, I'd put a foot or a hand in the water and I'd be surprised at how fast we were moving. Maybe, like I said, maybe I'm just used to lighter boats that have a lot more motion. The seating is good. I love lying on the deck or tucking down with my butt on the floor and my feet in the well. There are a dozen different ways to get comfortable on this thing, and the space for sleeping too side by side is there, though I haven't tested it yet. Not on the water, at least. Critiques, problems. The first one is that it's uglier than I expected. The planking is just off visually when viewed from eye level or below. Another problem is the paint is too dark, this blue. I have to keep a point and shoot laser on hand, a thermometer to keep an eye on the temperatures to make sure that I'm not melting the epoxy. Mass epoxy says it's 130 degrees where things start to turn south. So it breaks my heart to think that I'm gonna paint this a lighter color, but it's the right thing to do to make the boat last. What else? That pivot point in the mast, like I mentioned, it's overcomplicated. Some trade-offs, but I do worry about its strength. Well, I'm just starting to get used to this boat. I need to make longer oars, but I mean, this boat's not for getting anywhere quick under oars. I just don't want to have a motor on it. So that's it. My bedbug cruising dinghy for 2 people. For 2 people to sleep side by side. Looks a lot like a fully open boat. I mean, it kind of is a fully open boat, and it's launched. You can't say a boat like this is ever really finished, you know, because now it's just transitioning from the build to maintenance, and I still got 100 things to fine tune before I'm even happy with it. Maybe kind of a tongue-in-cheek launch video is forthcoming, but for now, after just working tirelessly to get this thing launched, I might rest for a little bit. At least I'm calling the build series complete. The boat's on the water, so. You can shoot me a message if you want to see my plans for this boat. They're definitely a rough draft, but if some people express some interest, then I will revise them a little bit. This and a couple other builds are on my channel. I built a yawl-rigged flat-bottom skiff that's really a smaller version of this. Man, I love that boat so much. It's why I built a bigger version of it. It was designed to fit in the bed of my truck, which it does. And it was also designed that if you didn't want to make a sail, you could use an off-the-shelf Harbor Freight canvas tarp. So that build series is on the channel with the design I used included right in the videos. I built like a chopped dory that turned out okay. I mean, I had some issues with the build. It is not recoverable from a capsize the way I built it, and it is awfully tender. But it is a fun boat to take out. I think it does well for its size, for being more for rowing than sailing, but doing both, and light weather. And for now, I'll end with a comment on the incredible amount of work it takes to dream up and to produce a boat like this. I know it's a relatively small boat for a lot of people, but for me, it's a massive project and a bigger boat than any of the other ones I have. To start with just like a daydream of a boat that'll do things that you want it to do, and to bring it to reality like this is just endless hours of dedicated work. But the mental and sometimes even the physical challenge is an adventure and a learning experience, and it makes the effort worth it. I think that building wooden boats like this, generally, even if your first one or two turn out kind of bad, I think it's worth the effort. So I recommend it. And that's it. Thanks for watching.